All right. Okay. Andrew. Brother Andrew Goolsby.
Yeah, that's me.
Goolsby. Share with us.
Good morning. That was a pretty good morning there. Well, I'm glad to be here this morning with y'all. It's been goodness. Was it right before Christmas that I came last? So it's good to be back. So today we're going to be in the Gospel of Mark, chapter 8. Gospel of Mark, chapter 8. Again, I'll wait until I hear the turning of pages and the tapping of glass stop, and then we'll jump in. Mark chapter 8, verse 31. Okay. Mark chapter 8, verse 31. And he began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders and the chief priests and the scribes and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. And he said this plainly. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. But turning and seeing his disciples, he rebuked Peter and said, "Get behind me, Satan. For you are not setting your mind on the things of God, but on the things of man." And calling the crowd to him with his disciples, he said to them, "If any one of you would come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. For whoever saves his life will lose it. But whoever loses his life for my sake and the gospel's will save it. For what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his soul? For what can a man give in return for his soul? Whoever is ashamed of me and of my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, of him will the Son of Man also be ashamed when he comes in the glory of his Father with the holy angels. So this sounds like a heavy passage, right? You've got a whole cast of people here in this setting, right? You've got Jesus. You've got the inner group of disciples, mainly Peter. Then you've got the rest of the disciples kind of on the periphery. And then you've got this large group of people, this large crowd that's gathered around to hear what Jesus has to say. What's Jesus' message? He tells them that he's going to suffer and be brutally killed. Now, as we sit here this morning, goodness, who would want to hear that message, right? Your pastor's sitting up here, he's like, "Guys, y'all are following me, and guess what? Today I'm going to get brutally killed. And guess what? You're supposed to follow me." I think everybody's eyes would be about that big, right? But that's what Jesus says. But that's not where the story ends, right? That's not the last thing that Jesus says to the group. He also tells them that on the third day, he's going to rise from the dead, right? So Jesus both says he's going to die a really horrific death, and then he's going to rise from the grave. And this is, as I read this, not the first time I read it, but when I was preparing this sermon, when I read it, I thought, man, this is such an interesting way to have a conversation with not just one person, but a group of people. And the scripture says he said it plainly. I mean, he said it very matter-of-factly. Like, this is just what's going to happen. Like, this isn't, well, maybe if this happens, then this is going to happen, and then this is going to happen, and here we are. No, he says, this is what's going to happen. Go ahead and write it down on your calendar. This is what's going to happen. Meaning that Jesus said it as though it was a matter of fact. Matter of fact, not a possibility, not this may happen if we don't play our cards right. This is going to happen. So a question is, why does Jesus give this information? I mean, as I'm standing here, I'm not sitting here, obviously. As I'm standing here in front of y'all, and y'all are sitting there, you think to yourself, if you didn't know how the story ends, you think, man, why are you telling us this, Jesus? This doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Why are you telling us this? Why are you giving us this information? Because for many, he was the one to throw off the rule of the Romans, right? So in this time, you've got an occupation of sorts. The Romans are living in the land. They've conquered most of that region, or most of that continent, and they're living here in where the Israelites are living. They are the rulers of the time. And they, being the Israelites, saw Jesus, the ones that believed in him, as the person who's going to throw off that rule, who's going to raise himself up as a king and lead them out of this bondage. And the sad thing is, that includes even those that were closest to him, right? That's the ones that he saw on the side of the bank and said, today you're going to be fisher of men, no longer fisher of fish. That includes the tax collectors, the doctor. It includes all these people that he had called his closest, his disciples. They thought he was going to be this ruler that's going to overthrow this kingdom that is ruling over them. That's why you see Peter, kind of the ringleader of the group, I guess, if you will. At least he's probably the most vocal person in the group. He's like, oh Jesus, what you doing over here, man? This is not the plan. This is not how this is supposed to go. This is not. Come here, Jesus. Come here for. Hold on. Guys, you know this isn't the way it's supposed to go, Jesus. Right? This is what he's saying to Jesus here. Now, before we give Jesus too hard of a time, that would be me. I would be the person over there saying, Jesus, hold on. Let's slow the roll just a little bit. That's not the plan. And I'm sure that many of us would find ourselves in that place, right? But what does Jesus do? Jesus corrects Peter in a very public way, right? So, who in here has been corrected in a public way? Most of us should probably raise our hands. Probably it was when we were about this tall, right? You've done something you probably knew that was wrong because that's how it usually works. And then it happens in a public place, maybe right here at church, because that's where I got publicly corrected most of the time, was at church, being a minister's kid. Does that feel good? This means yes, this means no. I mean, yeah, of course it doesn't feel good, right? It feels like, I could picture some moments in my life where I was corrected in church and be like, man, that was rough. But this is Jesus, right? This is Jesus correcting Peter in front of this entire group, his closest friends, and then this outer group of people that are following, right? Jesus says, your plans and God's plans are not the same. They're not the same. And there's something fundamentally wrong with Peter's plan. There's something fundamentally wrong with it, right? Now, it might take a second to think about it. The difference between God's plan, Jesus going and suffering and dying and being raised from the dead to pay the price of sins, and Peter's plan of overthrowing the Romans, right? They seem pretty on pretty opposite ends, but there's something fundamentally different about them, right? One has longer lasting effect. One is very short and very narrow and only affects a short period of time in history. One affects all of history, all of time. But we'll come back to that. Jesus turns his attention to the crowd. What is the cost to follow me? That's a simple question, right? What's the cost to follow me? It's a simple question, but the answer is very complicated. It's not a simple answer to a simple question. Discomfort, pain, being looked down on, being thought a fool, and death. That was in that time. Now, in our time, currently, we're not feeling all of that, right? But we're probably coming to a time where we start to feel more of this. When you look at the TV, when you look at any form of social media, when you listen to the radio, when you listen to wherever you are getting your information from, know this, that this world is not a believer of this. Our country, even though it was founded by people that claim that they believe this is not that same group of people anymore. We're coming to a time in our nation's history where you are going to be divided by those who believe in the gospel and those who do not believe in the gospel. We're coming to a time of discomfort and pain and being looked down on. I mean, some of this we're already feeling, but I think it's going to be worse. Jesus says, save your life and lose it. or lose your life and save it. Now, it seems like a really simple phrase, but obviously it's really deep, right? If I save my life, I'm going to lose it. So there's two ends of the spectrum. I'm saving my life. That means here, right now, in this time that we're living in, versus losing it in all of eternity. Or losing it in the short term of this life and gaining it in eternity. Now when you start to flesh that out, that makes more sense of what Jesus is saying here, why this is important. Because the life that we're living right now is like a drop in a bucket. It's like a grain of sand on the sea, on the beach out there. It's really insignificant when you put it in the context of eternity. If you don't know, eternity is a long time. It's a long time. Picture in your mind's eye Jesus looking at the crowd and saying these words. I can picture it right now. I can picture it. Jesus is standing up in front of this group. He's got Peter standing right here, and he's looking at him like, Jesus, what are you doing right now? And then the disciples are kind of over here like looking at each other like, what in the world have we got ourselves into? And then you got the big crowd around them, and they're just, their eyes are like deer in headlights, like just blinking kind of blankly, like, what am I hearing right now? Can you picture that? I identify with that story because I'd be one of those characters. Not Jesus. I wouldn't be that character. I'd be one of the people over here doubting everything, like, what in the world's going on, Jesus? What are you thinking? What are you doing? What are you talking about? This doesn't make any sense. Why is it what Jesus said? Why is it that what Jesus said is so crazy? I mean, it seems pretty simple. Well, let me tell you, the answer is really simple. Because we still think this world has what is best. We think this world has the best things to offer still. Now, I point at myself because I find myself in this. Maybe you're the tech person, so you want the newest phone, you want the newest TV, whatever that gadget is. Maybe you're a truck person. I want the newest F1, whatever. It doesn't matter. Maybe you're a house person. You want all the biggest and the best and the wood floor. It doesn't matter what it is. We think that this world has the best thing to offer us. Am I right? What does it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his soul? I don't know about for you, but that's a heavy statement for me. That hits me right here in the chest. What does it gain me to have everything that my heart desires if I lose my soul in eternity? That brings everything in really fast, doesn't it? It takes our really wide view of what this world has to offer us in our moments in our few moments that we have in our time on earth, and brings it in really narrow and says, wow, I'm only going to live 80, 90 years probably. Some of us are only a quarter of the way there. Some of us are halfway there. Some of us are on the doorstep, right? Jesus is pointing to something we look over and past and through, right? The prize is not here on earth. The prize is not found in this life. Let me say that one more time. The prize is not found here on earth, and the prize is not found in this life that we live here on earth. Ultimate joy, ultimate pleasure, ultimate riches, ultimate satisfaction is found in the life to come. But just like the disciples, just like Peter, just like the crowd, we think we find it here. We think we find it in the best job, in the big family, the best car, the best house, the nice TV, the list goes on. You know what it is for you. It's different for each of us. The church has lost its way. Am I right? The church has lost its way. We've bought into the lie over here. I mean, those that don't believe in the Bible, they haven't had anything to buy into because they're already living it. We're the ones who've bought the lie. We're the ones who know the truth. And I say that with my hand raised because I'm one of them. Okay? I'm not going to stand up here and say this and not include myself because I'm in that camp. The sad thing is there's people out there that would have you believe that your best life can be had here on earth. There's people all around us that would tell us a story of how you can have your best life right now. Right now. But I would argue that God never intended for your best life to happen anywhere else but in His presence in eternity. Let me say that one more time. But I would argue that God never intended for your best life to happen anywhere else but in His presence in eternity. See, we can strive for the best things in life. And there's nothing wrong with having nice things. That's not the point of the message here. It's not the point of the message. The point of the message is we only have one thing that's of value. We only own one thing of value in ourselves. That's our soul. What are you going to give it to? What are you going to give the one thing that you have of value to? Are you going to give it to Christ, who has eternal, everlasting, unlimited value? Or to the cheap thrills of this world? Don't throw it away to the cheap thrills that this life has to offer. Now, I understand that that's not something that you say today and you walk out the door and that's the last time you have to worry about it. Like, look, I get it. This is something we have to get up as a 15-year-old all the way up to the day we die. We're going to have to get up every day and we're going to have to lay that down. I'm going to have to say what's most important is the life to come. That doesn't mean I can't have something nice today, but my value is not found in that. My value is found in the person that paid the price. So don't throw it away for the cheap thrills that this life has to offer. Rather, lay it down. Take up your cross, not for joy that passes away, but endless joy. See, that's something that's hard for us to really kind of wrap our minds around. Because everything in life that we experience has a beginning. Well, let me do it this way. A beginning and an end. Because I have to think in my mind, I'm doing it this way, but that's reversed for y'all. So it's okay to laugh, y'all, okay? Everything has a beginning and an end for us, right? We go into work, we go in at, we'll just say 8 o'clock, and we get off at 5 o'clock. That's a beginning and an end. We have a bedtime that we try to hit, sort of around, we're gonna try and hit that bedtime, right? So we'll have a start time on the bed, we'll go to sleep, and then we'll wake up in the morning when our alarm goes off, maybe, or the sun comes up and wakes us up. That's the end. All we know, all we live are beginnings and ends. Right? All of life is a beginning and an end to us. So what I said just then is hard for us to understand. It's hard for us to fathom because we don't really know anything that is endless. Now, some of y'all might be thinking, well, this sermon is pretty endless. See, I gotta laugh. That's not too bad. Man. But we don't really fathom endlessness because we only understand beginnings and ends. So when I say that the joy that we experience in Christ in eternity is endless, that means the best food that you could have ever experienced here, the best movie that you could have ever watched, the best concert you ever went to, the best whatever. Just draw a line and insert whatever it is that you find the most joy in, that there's a beginning and an end to. You know what it's going to be? It's going to be a grain of sand out there on the beach in comparison to the endless eternity of the joy that Christ is going to give us for those that lay down the momentary thrills of this world and take up the eternity, the everlasting joy of being with God. So let's pray. God, I recognize that this sermon is just as much for me as it is for anybody in this room. But God, I know that you've put me here this morning to share a message. So I believe it in the same way that this message is just as much for me, that there's somebody in the room that needs to hear it as well. I don't know who that is. Only you do. God, I just pray that the words, not my words, I mean, your words, that would impress upon our hearts, that it would change the trajectory that we have in life, that you would use us to further the gospel, that you'd use us to open up the eyes of those that are around us for what you have done and what you are doing in our lives. And that we would begin to value what this world has to offer you versus what you have to offer. This momentary joy versus eternal, everlasting, never ending, never ceasing joy. God, we can't even fathom what that even looks like, feels like, tastes like, all the sensations, God. God, if there's somebody here that doesn't know you, I pray that you would draw them to yourself, that they put their trust in you. I ask all this in the